Hey guys, welcome to my video. I am your host, the J-Man, and today I'm going to be continuing my review of X-Men Volume 2, Issues 6 and 7. Okay, so Issues 6 and 7, both written by Jim Lee, and the artwork was done by Art Thibert. Wonderful artwork here. Very traditional and nostalgic 90s material. This is what set the tone and the style for the X-Men television show, although the TV show is obviously toned down for children. You know, I mean, not really children, but, you know, kids under age, probably at least under age 16. So between, I'm going to say that the television show is probably for kids between ages 6 to 16, somewhere right around there would be the target audience. But the graphics, the comics, the age group would go up considerably because, you know, they have more mature storylines and bloodshed and things like that, a lot more violence. Okay, let's get back to the specifics of issues 6 and 7. What I particularly like about them. First of all, I'm a fan of the Blue Team. I like Cyclops and Gambit and Rogue and them a lot more than I do Bishop, Storm, Jean Grey, which I forgot to mention her. She's part of the Gold Team. All these people are part of the Gold Team. Iceman. You know, they were featured in the Uncanny X-Men. I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to that because I pretty much liked the stories with Wolverine and Psylock and Cyclops and Gambit. I mean, they had the relationship between Gambit and Rogue. That was always interesting. Gambit was pretty new to the X-Men. You know, he's a cool character. I like following him. Cyclops is, other than Professor X, I'd say he's like the overall leader, even higher up and more regarded than Storm. And of course you have Wolverine. He's a total badass, like reckless, and totally unpredictable. You never know what Wolverine's going to do. And then Psylock, she's a badass chick. You know, she's hot. She's a ninja, samurai. I mean, she's awesome. So yeah, in my book, X-Men was quite a bit better than Uncanny X-Men, even though Uncanny was always looked at as the flagship book, like the #1 title when it came to X-Men. And you know, this series, just plain X-Men, is like, I guess you could say the secondary. But yeah, the relaunch was really focused more on X-Men Volume 2, this one here, rather than Uncanny. But, you know, nevertheless, Uncanny remained the #1 book. But I think storylines like this one really helped the sales of X-Men, and I'd be extremely interested to see or to find out how well this book sold compared to the Uncanny X-Men. I would venture to say that this one outsold Uncanny on a number of occasions. Maybe not overall, but I'd say whenever there was like a more prominent event, like let's say the next one coming up would have been Executioner's Song, which was like, you know, what was that, late 92 into 1993. It was a major story because that one involved the very first time we saw Strife and, you know, the execution of Professor X. First time ever anyone assassinated. Well, maybe not the first time, but it looked like Professor X was dead. It looked like Cable shot him, and then, you know, you got into all this information about Cable, which we hadn't really gotten into up until that point. But yeah, that was Executioner's Song, which would come a couple issues later, maybe like a dozen issues later. Yeah, you know, this was April of '91, and the Executioner's Song started November of '92. So yeah, more than a year later, that's for sure. Almost 2 years later. But what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, okay. So this was issue 6. Volume 2, issue 1 and 1 through 3 pretty much dealt with the whole Magneto versus Citizens of Earth storyline, and the X-Men took up the defense for the Citizens of Earth, and they assaulted Magneto on Asteroid M, and then Asteroid M blew up, and supposedly Magneto blew up with it, but he didn't really die in that storyline. Obviously they would bring him back, but at this time in the continuity, Magneto was believed to be dead, so you didn't have a whole lot of other major threat villains out there other than Apocalypse, but Apocalypse was getting weaker because an X-Factor leading up to X-Men Volume 2 number 1, the X-Factor consisted of the original X-Men, which the original team, and their primary villain was Apocalypse. So they kicked Apocalypse's ass. So right at this time, the continuity, Apocalypse is also very weak. So Omega Red was a pretty big threat. Years later, the character didn't really catch on. I mean, he's kind of viewed as a lesser villain now. But all of the panels and images from this issue, let's say this issue in particular, 6 and 7, so iconic, so nostalgic. Great material for a future adaptation. Like if they're gonna do another Wolverine origin story, I'd say they definitely need to get a hold of this and take a look at it. Very inspiring, motivational stuff as far as creativity goes. Like I love the artwork by what did I say? Art Byman, or what was his name? I gotta give him more credit because this artwork is so good for the time. Art Thibert. He didn't do the cover, but I love the X-Men animated show, and I never followed the comics. I heard about things that happened in the comics, but I never followed them. And now looking back at it, I realize how much more rich and detailed the comics were than the animated show. The animated show always had to adapt the stories from the comic books, and stories like this that heavily involve Psylock, they either got completely ignored or completely manipulated and re-edited because they didn't want to use Psylocke for reasons like her costume is too controversial, we can't show that. Her figure is just not appropriate for television, for child audiences, which I mean, they could have fixed that. That's not a major detail. It's just they could give her a less revealing costume, but compared to Rogue and Jean, she's pretty much the same figure. I mean, just all comic book chicks are pretty hot. So yeah, I still have a hard time understanding why they couldn't use Psylocke for the cartoon show. Maybe they just had too many characters and they feel like they didn't need another female character, especially a lead character. Let's see. Okay, well now with the Gold Team, you had Archangel and Iceman, and they were hardly even in the show at all. Archangel, he was in quite a few episodes in the beginning, like the first season, especially the stories involving Apocalypse. He was in a lot of those, but he was never really a constant in the animated series. He wasn't one of the team members. You didn't know him as one of the team members. Till later on in the animated show, they revealed that he was once a part of the X-Men. But really, during the comic books, he was a part of the team just as much as all the others, Beast and Gambit and all of them. And even Iceman, the cartoon show only had like one episode with Iceman. And it's like, wow, he's supposed to be on the team the whole time. And like major crossover storylines, such as the Executioner song and Days of the Future Past. Well, not Days of the Future Past, so that happened way back in the 70s, I think. But Executioner song, which, all those stories they would have to adapt to the cartoon show, involved Archangel and Iceman and Psylock. But they were completely removed from those episodes. Not that they were removed; they were just never there in the first place. The animators didn't put them there. It's very unfortunate because looking back on it, Psylocke is one of my favorite X-Men now. But yeah, what's cool about this story? The fact that it brings Sabretooth and Wolverine together, and Wolverine's having flashbacks about all the stuff that happened to him, but no one remembers or recognizes Sabretooth as being a part of that team other than the audience, the people that are reading the comic book. Wolverine doesn't remember per se, the bad guys don't remember per se. I mean, Matsuo hires Sabretooth, but he doesn't realize Sabretooth was also a part of that mission involving the carbonadium synthesizer. So you might as well, you just as well would question Sabretooth as to the whereabouts of it as you would Wolverine, but they don't know that. They have no clue that Sabretooth was also a part of that mission. They just know Wolverine did something with it. And you would think that Omega Red would be able to remember Sabretooth as being, one of the guys on that team that stole the synthesizer. But, that's one little plot hole in this storyline. It's hard to overlook. But then again, it's not, because Sabretooth, Victor Creed, allowed himself to evolve. His mutation turned him into a beast. Oh, he was like a savage beast by this time, which could make him a whole lot less recognizable compared to supposedly way back whenever that happened, that mission in the CIA team, the Team X, if you will. 50 years could have gone by, maybe even more than that could have gone by. Well, probably not more than 50 because, maybe 50 years since then. So my point is that Sabretooth, his mutation turns him into a beast, and the more the time goes by, the more bestial he gets. Wolverine's mutation would do the same thing, except that they explain it as, because Wolverine has the adamantium in his body, his healing factor is constantly having to deal with that. So that slows down his healing factor. It slows down his mutation. So therefore, he's not transforming into this beast like Sabretooth is. But later on, I think 1993, when the return of Magneto, it's called a story arc called Fatal Attractions, where Magneto strips the adamantium from Wolverine's bones. After that, yes, Wolverine survives. He doesn't survive in the Ultimate Universe when pretty much the same thing happens, but he does here, and he has bone claws after that, and he begins mutating into the beast, into this freakish beast, just like Sabretooth would be, like Sabretooth has become. So, yeah, there you have it. My final thoughts on X-Men Volume 2, Issues 6 and 7. Thanks for watching my video. If you have any questions about X-Men, I'd love to try to help fill you in. As always, you can go to Marvel.com and read the details there. That's where all my information comes from. So, thanks guys, and see you next time.